Please start.
Yes, yes, yes. We are going live. Just a second. Namaste and good morning on behalf of Sahitya Akademi and Foundation of SAARC Writers in Literature. I heartily welcome you all to the 5th session of the South Asian Online Literary Conference. In this session, the distinguished writers with us are Professor Anand Kumarji, who will chair this session, Dr. Mohibullah Zegam from Afghanistan, Mr. Apareke Siri Sudhamma Himi from Sri Lanka, Dr. Sohana Manzoor from Bangladesh, Ms. Saida Ayubi, who will join us soon. All these writers will read out from their fiction. I am happy that Ajit Kaur ma'am is also with us in this session. Yet again, I heartily welcome you all to this session and first request Dr. Mohibullah Zegam to read out from his fiction. First, I request Dr. Zegam to briefly introduce himself, and each of the writers will follow our time frame, that is 12 minutes each. Dr. Zegam, hearty welcome to you.
Thank you so much. Very good morning to all of you. I'm very happy to see all of the COVID-19 crisis, and I'm very happy to see respected Madam Ajit Kaur.
Excuse me, Dr. Zegam, there is some distortion in the line. Is the net connectivity
healthy and doing well for a long time as we live? And I'm happy to see Professor Anand Kumar as well after a long time. So thank you. I want to say thanks to the team who made
excuse me, Dr. Zegam. There seems to be some problem with the internet connectivity there. We can't hear you properly. There is some distortion in the line.
Unfortunately, it happens sometimes.
Okay, we will, if you allow, we will wait for some time and we'll get back.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Now it is clear. No, it is stopped. Unfortunately, net connectivity failure. Anyway, we will invite him yet again after some time.
Do you hear me?
Dr. Zegam, just a minute. We will wait for some time and we will get back to you. Now, I invite Mr. Apareke Siri Sudhamma Himi, the writer from Sri Lanka, to read out from his fiction.
Thank you very much.
Siri Sudhammaji, briefly introduce yourself and then read out from your fiction.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
And take the time of maximum 12 minutes, please.
Yeah. Are you hear me clearly?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, please continue, Siri Sudhammaji.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm Venerable Aparakke Siri Sudhamma from Sri Lanka. I'm Buddhist monk. Actually, I have finished my BA degree and MA degree and MPhil degree about the language of Sinhala. Thank you very much for, especially I would like to thank, first of all, I would like to thank Sahitya Akademi for giving such kind of opportunity to express my idea about literature. This is fictional reading. In my 12 minutes allocate for, this is not totally about fictional reading. This is sometimes about a book that's mean Tera Gatha. Tera Gatha means very important book. I think you already heard about that book. I will explain what is Tera Gatha and how it is important to appreciate as a literary book. If you give me if you allow me to share my document, I can share it. I think I can share it. Yeah, thank you very much. Everyone can see it now.
Yeah.
Actually, my topic, I make topic like this way: the evaluation of Tera Gatha. In the tradition of Pali Canon, Tera and Tera Gatha can be received as very significant books. Actually, this is book written by in Pali language. I think you know about Pali language. In Buddhist culture, in Buddhist canon, we can see this book in. It is called Tera Gatha. Tera Gatha means who uttered their utterance in Pali language. It is called Tera Gatha. Tera Gatha means one who is monk. Tera Gatha means one who is nun. In the tradition of Pali Canon, Tera and Tera Gatha can be perceived as very significant books. They included the poems or verses explained in the lives of brethren. That's brethren means Tera or Bhikkhu, that means monks, and sisters, Teri or Bhikkhunis, in the Buddhist order. In the Tera Gatha, there are 1,279 verses. There are old verses. That's mean in the 6th century things. We can discuss all those things later. Which represent 264 monks. The Tera Gatha has 522 verses, which were proposed by 73 bhikkhunis. That's mean nuns. The most important fact to be aware of is that all of these verses were presented by Arahant monks and nuns. That means enlightened monks and nuns. One who understand about their life properly. That means one who understand ultimate truth properly. It is called enlightened monks and nuns. Both books are included in 5th group. That means the Khuddaka Nikaya of the 3 Pitaka, the Sutta Pitaka in the Pali Canon. Those 2 books included in the Pali Canon. From these 2 books, we will discuss about Tera Gatha. It has 522 verses. Between 2 books, we usually pay more attention to the Tera Gatha. Scholars conclude that the verses collected in the Tera Gatha were uttered over a period of 300 years from the end of the 6th century to the middle of the 3rd century BC. That means that this book can be appreciated as one of the oldest evidence about women's literature. This is the most important point that I want to stress here. The Tera Gatha can be appreciated as one of the oldest evidence in the women's literature. Actually, Therigas are uttered in Indian women. Indian women, that means Indian monk, Indian nuns, Buddhist Indian nuns. Scholars conclude with that means 6th century. During these centuries, gathas were probably added onto the original stock, or they underwent alternation. Selection and revision were done at the Third Council, partly Putta, and it is this version that has been hand down to us. Very carefully examination of the Theri Gatha can be seen as an effective method for getting the right idea about this book. The commentary by the Venerable Dhammapala called Paramatta Deepani is a most important witness. Professor H. Oldenburg, R. Wiesel, Rhys Davis, K.R. Norman, and E. Muller have also proved distinguished translation and addition to this book. Therigatha can be evaluated following as way. Those kind of 522 verses we can evaluate it following as ways. This is the ways which can be evaluated this book. The facet of life of Therigatha, that's mean reflection, open, shocking, and jarring experience in life, evaluation of life of bhikkhunis, that mean nuns, and aesthetic appeal of Therigatha, meaningful phrases, usage of similes, the similes relating to the Buddhist doctrine, the similes relating to the lay life, the similes relating to the romance, usage of metaphors, the special word relating to the Buddha, implied meaning, appreciation of environment. From these all kind of division, we will pay more attention to the facet of life of Therigatha, because we don't have enough time to explain all those things. The Therigatha is an ancient anthropology of Buddhist nuns, verses, and poems were spoken by the enlightened nun of Buddha's time. The most important point to be elucidate here is that those poems contain a great deal of instruction, help, and explanation to explicate how those nuns follow a noble eight path. That's been how those nuns follow the happiness and freedom, and how they develop morality, concentration, and wisdom, the three sections of the path, and how they felt freedom and found everlasting peace and happiness within the Buddhist order, and their description of their household life. Therefore, these explanation proved very effective insight to the facet of the life of the Therigatha. They can be divided into two major relevant themes. The first one is a reflection, open, shocking, and jarring experience in life. The second one is evaluation of the life of the bhikkhunis. We don't have enough time to explain those two parts, but I will explain from one thing, that's been reflection, open, shocking, and jarring experience in life, from the example in the Therigatha books. The ancient commentary on the Therigatha by the Venerable Acharya Dhammapala, as well as the great English translation, along with background stories by the Rhys Davis, has proved some very effective information about each nun's background and bibliography's details. These texts are very advantageous for understanding the lives of bhikkhunis and jarring experience from their household life, resulting from the society of that time, defining woman as inferior to men. Their position in society was highly degraded, badly discriminated against, and totally declined. Socially, women suffered many more difficulties than men did. In this situation, the Buddha gave permission for the women to enter the Buddhist order. Therefore, women felt more freedom in the Buddhist order than men. In some respect, the inspiration of nuns' poems can be considered stronger than the poems of enlightened Buddhist monks. The Therigatha can be recognized as the source of great evidence to describe the lives of women in the Buddha's times. After entering the Buddha's order, some theories describe their bitter household experience compared to their present inspiration. For an example, Punna theory, Punna means the name, Punna theory reflected upon her lay life experience as follows. I am a water carrier. Even in the winter, I have always gone down to the water, terrified by fear and punishment from the noble ladies, harassed by the fear, abuse, and displeasure. Those kind of things included in the Pali version, but we translated into English to understand everyone. That means she had go above the beyond in her duties out of fear and blame from the mistress. It is clear that naturally women suffered more difficulties than men. The second example, Mutta theory, a very good example to understand how they feel, how they felt freedom because of the Buddha's order, because of the entire in the Buddha's order. Mutta theory, Mutta means the name. Mutta theory spoke very freely and expressed her glorious freedom as follows. Now I am properly released by the three crooked things, by the mortar, pestle, and my crooked husband, as well as I am free from birth and death and eliminated the craving. I would like to say that Pali version in original. I would like to say that English version in original Pali version like this way: Sumutta sadhu mutthamhi tihi kujjehi muttiya udukkalena musalena patina kujjakena cha mutthamhi jati marana bhavanetti samuhata. This is the Pali version. You can see before the English version here. She used three very meaningful words here: mortar, pestle, and crooked husband, to eliminate the bitter situation of the women in Asian society at that time. During that time, women had no appears not even as a sister, wife, or mother. They were required to fulfill many duties under the authority of men. The establishment of the Bhikkhuni order was absolutely assistance to women seeking freedom from internal and external obstacles. Now I am going to conclude my speech. Entire in the Bhikkhuni's order, they could succeed in their ultimate goal, stop rebirth, and experience ultimate happiness free from suffering. Therefore, the Gatha bibliography is proved to be very advantageous because of the revelation of these nuns, as well as this book has great epiphanies to understand life of the women. I wrote down many things, but I know we don't have enough time to explain all those things. Finally, I would like to say one important point. Gatha is a very important book in the Pali canon. Included 522 verses, that's mean poems, in Pali version. From these Pali versions or from these Pali poems, we can understand Buddha's times how women's felt during experience after become nuns, how they feel happiness, how they feel freedom, as well as from these utterance, from these poems, we can understand appreciation, aesthetic appreciation. As finally, I would like to say this book can be appreciated as one of the oldest evidence about women's literature. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sri Sudama Himiji. Thank you very much for your presentation. Now I come to Dr. Sohana Manzoor, the writer from Bangladesh, to read out from her fictional paper what she intends to. Briefly, I request you to briefly introduce yourself and then present your.
So much. Thank you so much for having me here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Am I audible? Okay.
Yeah, you are.
Okay. So I'm Sohana Manzoor. I am from Bangladesh. I teach at the University of Liberal Arts English Department. I'm an associate professor there. And thank you all for inviting me and having me here. So I would like to read from a short story Elusive. It is a story about an artist for whom family and love remained elusive and who discovered that in her anger and resentment against the world, she neglected the one person, her great grandmother, who was the most precious person to her. By the time she realizes that the old lady had died and all she is left with is regret. The portion that I have chosen to read is about her childhood and her relationship with her mother and her great grandmother. Ratri did not know how her mother smelled, that is, how she really smelled. She saw her from a distance when she was dressed up to leave the house or returning from a show. When she entered a room, everyone noticed her, and she wore a tantalizing perfume that Ratri thought was mysterious, just like her. Many years later, she recognized the perfume in a famous fashion house in London as Miss Dior. Sometimes she petted Ratri absent mindedly in the same absent minded way she petted the house cat Minnie. She practiced early in the morning in a room downstairs. She had a beautiful figure, and Ratri thought that her mother danced divinely. Her grandmother often joked that they must have had a Baiji, a professional dancer, in the family tree, and her daughter Nazma had inherited that talent. Even though she had been married before and had a small child, she had no dearth of suitors. Ratri clearly remembered the bevy of men who came to court her, as one courts a queen, without any expectation of return. They often brought presents for Ratri too. Nazma had a charming smile for everybody, a smile she used to practice before the mirror in her room. She was a consummate artist. Everything she did was practiced and trained. Dancing was the only thing she cared about. There were times when Ratri tiptoed to the room where her mother practiced and stood outside the door to listen to the ringing of her anklets and the tag tin tinta, na tin tinta, better tin tinta that accompanied the music her mother danced to. Some evenings there were other dancers who joined her and they danced together. Ratri remembered one night they were all rehearsing a Tagore dance drama. She thought her mother was some princess or queen, and she was ordering her attendants to summon somebody. Bolke Nagur Pale Murnam Kuri, Shama Dakiteche Tare. Ratri did not understand the words but was enchanted by the rhythm and the spectacle of the performance. She did not notice Naina auntie approaching. Her aunt found her entranced by the door and dragged her away. What are you doing here, Pichi? Little one, you know that your mom doesn't like to be disturbed during rehearsal. Come with me. Ratri turned toward her aunt. She's so pretty. Is she a princess? Naina laughed. No, she's who she is, a court dancer. When Boroma heard about the incident, she looked at the child and commented in a stern voice, Nazu should spend some time with Ratri. She needs to make time for her daughter. Naina auntie replied, she looks so much like her father that Appa does not even want to look at her. Boroma shook her head. She should have allowed him to take her then, she said. What's the point of keeping her and then neglecting her? Ratri had not known then what the word neglect meant, but over the years, she grew up learning all its nuances. She survived because of Boroma, the only person who actually cared. And yet, Ratri would eventually take her for granted, imagining that the old lady would always be there. The years went by so fast, the rainbow years of childhood, the reckless years of youth, and she wondered what she did with them. Boroma, the little girl came running. The old man was just done with her midday prayers and she had opened her large closet. Yes, my darling, she smiled at the upturned face of her great granddaughter. Usually, Ratri loved to sniff around her Boroma when she opened the closet. There were things from the past, like her bridal sari that dated from before the partition, the old embroidered pieces that she had made as a young woman, curious little sandalwood boxes and dainty silver trinkets tarnished with age. And there was that mysterious and intimate smell of incense and naphthalene. But today, Ratri was too preoccupied to notice. Toton uncle says that I cannot take on a big journey because I'm a girl. Ratri had a frown on her small forehead. That's not right, is it? She asked. What do you think? Asked her great-grandmother. I think he's wrong. I plan to look for my prince rather than the prince searching for me. Aha, smiled Boroma. So that's what the journey is about. Yes, but I want to take on the journey. I don't like that the prince finds the sleeping beauty. Why can't the princess go in search of the prince herself? Asked a rather peeved Ratri. Naina, who was poring over a dense medical text, snapped the book shut and laughed out loud. I guess you do have to look for your prince, Pretty. No prince will be happy to find you. You are so dark. Boroma barked. What kind of talk is that, Naina? There are a lot of girls who are dark. But not princesses, said Naina. Princesses are pretty and fair, while Ratri is. Before she could finish, the old lady intercepted coldly. Draupadi, the most sought-after woman of ancient India, was dark. Did you know that? And Ratri will be no stupid princess, you heard her. She has a mind of her own and will make her own choices when the time comes. Now get out of here before you utter any more nonsense. Now Naina left the room meekly, but Ratri was looking at her arms and legs, which were rather dark complexion compared to Naina and most of the people in the house. Even her Boroma was very fair, despite her wrinkled skin. She looked up at her Boroma. Does dark mean ugly, Boroma? She whispered. She hesitated a little before adding, Is that why Ammu does not love me? Who told you that your Ammu does not love you? Asked the old lady with a gleam in her eyes. Nobody, replied Ratri. She looked at her feet and examined her toes. She did not want to say that she overheard one of her uncles talking to his wife. She said lamely, Nine auntie says that's why I was named Ratri, meaning night. Despite the arthritis in her joints, Boroma bent down and grasped the little girl's face with both of her hands and lifted it towards her. Ratri looked at the liquid grey eyes of her great-grandmother. They were bright and somber. Listen, my pet, you are very beautiful. Your skin may not be as fair as your mother's, but you are lovely just as you are. But even more important is that you are also very brave. You have a beautiful spirit. You want to make a journey of your own. How many little girls want to do that, do you think? She got up slowly and smiled. Now run along and play. Don't worry over silly things and don't listen to Naina. Ratri walked into the veranda with her coloring books. It occurred to her that Boroma did not actually contradict the notion that her mother did not love her. A week after Ratri's 8th birthday, her mother got married again. She thought her mother had gone on some tour, but Nazma had actually gone on her honeymoon and then to live with her new husband. She had married some business magnate and launched a new life. Nazma had not informed Ratri and had not, of course, considered taking her to live with her and her new husband. Ratri's grandmother thought it odd that the girl did not ask even once about her mother, but Ratri already knew that her life would be different from all her cousins who lived with their parents and siblings. Most of her maternal uncles and aunts had married and moved out by then, but visited frequently with their children. Only Totan uncle and Naina auntie still lived in the sprawling old British-era house in Lalbagh. Ratri lived there too, along with her grandmother and Boroma. She kept mostly to herself, held court in a sun-drenched rooftop and laughed with the birds. She had few friends at school. The only person she could actually share her thoughts with was her Boroma, and she did not miss her mother much, even though she often wondered why her mother was not like other mothers. But the mysteriously beautiful woman she used to admire from a distance soon became a faded memory. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sohana Manzoorji, for that wonderful excerpt. Perhaps for Dr. Mohib, it is still difficult to join in. Now, I come to Professor Anand Kumarji and request him to read out from his forthcoming novel, Flight of the Swans. Anand Kumarji chairs the station as well. Sir, you need to unmute yourself. Sir, excuse me, you need to unmute yourself first, please.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, fine, you're audible now.
Thank you, sir. I thank Sahitya Academy and Madam Ajit Kaurji for this opportunity. And about myself, I am a retired professor of medicine who now writes poetry and fiction. And I live in Pondicherry. And I will read the author's note and a portion of prologue from my forthcoming novel, Flight of the Swans, which was actually completed in 2008, but now found a publisher now. The story is set in 19th century. It is inspired by a real story of a very pretty but strong woman, Hamsa her name. She was of Anglo-Nepalese descent. She had two English lovers, Angus and Lord Grey, and an Indian philosopher prince from Rajasthan, Neel Madhav. She married Neel Madhav but abandoned him for Lord Grey, with whom she had a son, Martin Thompson. The story begins in Nepal and moves to Rajasthan and London. Martin Thompson comes to India to discover his origin and the family of his mother and writes a journal, now Flight of the Swans. So I read now from author's note. Truth spoken loses its force. Unspoken, it remains a mystery. Ideas are conscious, beautiful, and joyous till they manifest. The full expression of an idea is constrained by the medium, words here, and the capacity of the artist. However, those who are receptive and sensitive grasp the truth despite its form. Characters born in mind exist somewhere, where I do not know. I know they sometimes incarnate, attire, and play out with words. Words are not a sincere medium to express gratitude. However, it was Manish who showed me a ghost town called Naikana in the Himalayan town of Ramgarh. Naikanas today, there were several Naikanas. Naikanas today are the abundant settlements of Nepali royals and rulers who were exiled to the Indian Himalayas in the aftermath of the coup in Nepal in 1846. Afterwards, another friend, Shri Prakash Kanpal, who died last month, told me a fascinating love story of a gorgeous Nayak girl named Hamsa. Everyone fell in love with her. Looking at her, seers were blinded and sages ruined. A young priest threw away his robes and God to elope with her. She married him. She lived in a Naikana between the end of 19th century and the beginning of the 20th. After my visit to the Naikana in Ramgarh, she seized my imagination. She told me several stories. One was particularly revealing. Hearing the footfall of a woman, a sage closed his eyes. The sage told Hamsa that women were the gateway to hell. Therefore, he did not look at them. She braved the insult and calmly said, "O revered monk, the door to hell is one's own lust. The serpent of evil sleeps coiled in its lair at the bottom of one's own heart." The sage remained nonchalant. "Listen to a story," Hansa said. "There was a noble wolf. For his love of God, he metamorphosed into a ferocious ascetic. He made a wonderful discovery. The cause of his insatiable greed lay in innocent lambs. He cursed them and prayed for their disappearance, not only from his sight, but also from the whole earth. Revered sir, you have shut your eyes to your own evil and also the truth within You may open your eyes now. I go. The holy man, ashamed and humiliated, called her back, but she did not heed him. She was a rebel who attacked the Puritans. She was determined to exhaust their senses and her own. Ever greater forces arise to swallow strong ones, thus end all lives. Once she naughtily whispered to me, echoing Sri Aurobindo, there are two things in God which men call evil, that which they cannot understand at all, and that which they misunderstood and possessing misuse. It is only what they grope after half vainly and dimly understand that they call good and good. But to me, all things in him are lovable. Hamsa, a bird, to be precise, a swan in Sanskrit. It swims in waters and crosses skies. Swan symbolizes the power of discrimination between truth and falsehood, as also the soul or the infinite in man. The soul fabricates the body, life and mind, and sins and virtues within itself. Existence plays the game of good and evil, joy and suffering. The soul remains unblemished, ever pure and free. Hansa assumed a new identity and life in my mind. She scripted an altogether different story. I lived with Hamsa in 19th century. She took me to places, various countries and continents, showed me life and seasons there. She introduced me to the characters present there. All of them agreed to play the novel. Oscar Wilde. I met him during a walk through the perfumed garden of decadence. I gathered the saplings of good and evil for raising them up in this novel. I met Jayadeva, William Blake, and Shelley in the heaven of love. Out of nobility, Hamsa scripted her own degradation. All the participants were very lively and interactive. In actual fact, they wrote out their parts themselves. I was merely a stage, a conscious platform. Is my time over? Is my time over? My
No,
time over?
3 minutes are there.
Okay.
You please continue. 3 minutes are there.
Okay. Words are many. They are habitats of man. Man and his habitat are porous. They live in each other. These words influence his imagination and action. When a man rises to silence, nature speaks. I live in a serene island named after Sri Aurobindo. I couldn't have conceived and written this story but for my charming habitat. Its wooded walks, trees, flowers, bees, moths, butterflies, turtles, squirrels, and monkeys. Here, the wild winds tease the trees, playing the ancient game of hide and seek noisily, the screech of parrots, the twitter of mynas, the call of peacocks, the song of cuckoos, and showy trot of Siberian guest birds, all speak of the subtle emotions of joy, love, and beauty. Charms float here. You catch them, they find you. The characters of a picture frame abruptly start moving when the magic fades and rush back in a scramble when the spell is cast. Fascinating. Sunrise and the setting sun behind trees and buildings, nightfall, the walk of the moon across the sky, the changing weather and seasons, a blazing sun, the pitter-patter of raindrops, winter fog, all make me dream, mount the clouds, and dance in heaven like a dervish. I thank the surreal denizens of the ashram. There are names beautiful and sacred which are unnamed here and after. They are treasured in my heart. Utterance like a common stain may obscure the purity of a jewel. Now I will just read 2 lines if you have time from the prologue.
Please.
This fellow, Martin Thompson, on his self-discovery, comes to India and meets the sage of Gir forest, the former husband of Hamsa, and he just asks him, "Are you not my father?" Neil was taken aback. He kept silent. After a while, the boy asked again, "Who's my father?" Neil Madhav was filled with deep compassion for the boy in front of him. "Hamsa was my wife. Indeed, you are my son." He tenderly touched Martin's head. In due course of time, Martin discovered the truth. He remained ever grateful to the sage for not having revealed the secret of his birth to him. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thanks a lot. Anyway, Dr. Muhib has been trying to join in, but finally he sent a message here, part of which I will read out. "I'm so sorry for the poor net connecting that interrupted our meeting. By the way, I would like to deliver my message here." And he says that he is so happy to meet all of us on screen, especially Ajit Kaur. He conveys namaste to you, Ajit Kaur.
Thank you, thank you.
His message is here. It is because of internet failure he couldn't get in, but
Thank you.
okay, it's okay. We missed him. And we missed also Miss Saida Ayubi as well. She couldn't join in. So finally, I thank all of you, Dr. Sohana Manzoor, Professor Anand Kumarji, and Mr. Siri Sudhamma Himiji, and Ajit Kaurji as well, for participating in this session and reading out your recent writings. Thanks all. This session ends here, and the next session will begin at 12:20, which will have interviews and conversation. Thank you all. This session ends here. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.